Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I am back again today doing another video, and today's video is going to be discussing something a little bit different. So as many of you who regularly watch my videos may know, lately I've been almost exclusively talking about this most recent NBA offseason, and today I'm going to not not totally go away from that, but I'm just going to intersperse it with a video that's going to be focused on just more of like a fun random topic rather than explicitly like my reaction to this team's off-season moves. So today I'm going to be talking about 5 players that I think are extremely underrated in the NBA today. Now, I did make a video like this about a year ago, I think, summer of last year, talking about 5 players that I thought were underrated. And I think a lot of those guys, 2 of my main ones in there were Tobias Harris and Chris Middleton. I think those guys for sure have gotten a lot more shine this past season in the NBA. People have acknowledged that they're really good players, from Chris Middleton being an all-star and signing a max contract to Tobias Harris signing a max contract this offseason and being recognized as a max money player. And then also TJ Warren was on there and a few other guys, but um, I just thought I'd do an updated version because I feel like there are just a lot of players in the NBA that go unnoticed, and I wanted to just highlight 5 today. So you might be surprised by some, you might not be surprised by some, but let's get into it. Oh, also, first off, I want to note I'm not going to have Damian Lillard on this list because everybody used to love to say Damian Lillard is so underrated. Uh, I don't think he really was ever underrated because the year that everybody was saying that, he got first team All NBA. So I never really got why people said he was underrated when he made plenty of All Star teams and stuff. And the years that he didn't make the All Star team, those were seasons in which the fan voting was still in place. And so, like, guys like Kobe were knocking him out of the All Star thing. But it wasn't that he was underrated, it's just that you only have so many slots on an All Star team. And when a few of them go to players who are only in there because of fans, then you're naturally going to have some guys left off. I'm also not going to feature Mike Conley or Drew Holiday because I feel like those are 2 guys that commonly get featured on videos like these. And I think there's sort of this concept in basketball or in any sport or in anything really where if everybody is saying something or somebody is overrated or underrated, is it really underrated because everybody is saying that? And so if everybody's talking about it, they're actually not underrated because they're actually very well appreciated. If everybody keeps bringing up they're so underrated, if everybody's saying that, then it kind of defeats the whole idea of them being underrated. So I feel like that's happened a lot with guys like Mike Conley and Drew Holiday, so I'm not going to bring them up either. Today I'm going to be trying to exclusively focus on guys who haven't made all-star teams or anything or been on any first team all defense, second team all defense stuff, guys who I do really think are underrated. And I'm not saying that they're going to blossom into an all star one day or anything, or that they're going to lead a team to a championship. I'm just saying that right now they're really good players that people don't focus on too often, but they could be a really good piece on a team, and they just don't get much shine uh, in the grander scope of the entire NBA conversation. Like maybe in the given matchup of a given night they get focused on, but you never hear like the national media talking about them despite them being very talented players. So first off, I'm going to start with the one that I think most people might have the problem with me saying he's underrated, and that is Hassan Whiteside. So yes, I know what you're thinking. Hassan Whiteside is making $28 million a year. How can a player who's making that much money be underrated? Well, I don't think that from a contract perspective he's underrated. I think from an ability perspective he's underrated. Honestly, in Portland right now, he's slotted as the backup center to Nurkic, and um, I think Hassan Whiteside is a guy who's like he has the ability to be a fringe all-star. I don't think he's a backup center to anybody in this league. I think he's better. I think he's better than Clint Capella. I think he's better than Steven Adams. I think he's better than DeAndre Jordan. I think he's definitely in the mold of those guys where he's kind of like the alley oop is his main form of offense, or kind of like the putback and stuff like that. He doesn't have much of an offensive repertoire, but um, he is very good at rebounding and very good defensively. And I think something interesting to note here is like you look at his stats from last year, he shot 57% from the field, and he averaged 12 points and 11 rebounds a game along with 2 blocks. And you say, well, that's not really impressive. 12 and 11, so what? But I think what's amazing here is if he was playing the minutes he used to play, like starters minutes, his per 36 numbers are very impressive. This past season, if he was playing 36 minutes a night, his averages would have come out to 19 points per game and 18 rebounds. And the year before, when he was also playing very limited minutes because the Heat didn't really want to use him as much, he in his per 36 he was averaging 20 points a night and 16 rebounds, so very impressive. And then blocks, he was averaging like 3 per 36 minutes for both years. So he's a guy who I definitely think is very underrated, just in that people kind of think he's like a head case and that he can't really play at all, but I sort of think he's just this guy that the Heat sort of gave up on in a way. Like they were the team that gave him a shot, but they were also the team that gave up on him really quickly when they decided to go in a different direction. They seemed like they liked the younger version of him in Bam Adebayo. I like Bam all right. He's a fine player, but I don't think he's even going to be as good as Hassan Whiteside. I think he'll definitely be in that mold of the Clint Capella type player, but I think Hassan is a better player. I just think the Heat wanted to move off of him because his contract is huge and they wanted Jimmy Butler. But they are also going with a lot more like small ball sets the last 2 years, and so Hassan kind of got squeezed out of that. But if he could find a home on a young team where he can be sort of one of the primary options, like if you put him on the Atlanta Hawks, who don't really have a center except for Alex Len, he would be such a great fit with the Atlanta Hawks. They like to get up and down. He's a very athletic guy. He'd work well in that offense. They can space it decently, so he can be out there and not worry, and he can be a great rim protector for them. It just is that he needs to be on a team that will be willing to play the style. Like, would he fit well on Houston? No, because he'd just be Clint Capella's backup, and they don't want to play two bigs at a given time, so he wouldn't really have any space on the court. But if he were to go to a team that really doesn't have an established center, he would be great on them. So that is my first guy, Hassan Whiteside. My next guy is one of the quietest dudes in the NBA as far as getting talked about, but he did just sign a nice contract with the Pacers, and that is Malcolm Brogdon. So Malcolm Brogdon was a former Rookie of the Year. Most people forget that. He was a Rookie of the Year in Milwaukee. And this last season, he put up some amazing statistics, as far as efficiency goes, at least. So last year he averaged 16 points a night, 5 rebounds, let's see here, 3 assists, 1 steal, but he shot 51% from the field, 43% from three-point land, and 93% from the free throw line. Those are really great numbers. Over 50% from the field, along with 43% from the three-point land, and then 93% from the line. I just wanted to reiterate those just because they are really impressive numbers for a 6'5" shooting guard / point guard. You know, you look at a guy like CJ McCollum, who most would say is way better than Malcolm Brogdon. He's shooting something like 42% from the field and like 37% from three. But Malcolm Brogdon, quietly on what was the best team in the NBA last year, was arguably their second best player just because of his efficiency numbers. And I would just like to point out that if you do adjust to him playing 36 minutes a night, he was playing like 32, but a standard metric is per 36 minutes. He's averaging 20 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and just on those efficiencies, that is so impressive to me. And I think the Pacers were a really lucky team to get him. And I think he's just a guy that he's never going to be your number one option. People are never going to look at him as your number two option. People are going to think of him as like a third or fourth option. But he's always going to be one of the main reasons your team wins and does well, I think. That was the case last year in Milwaukee, in which he was essentially, in my opinion, their second best player. Like if you look at him versus Chris Middleton averaged like 2 more points per game or 3 more points per game, but his efficiency was way worse. And for that reason, I think he's just an efficiency darling in this NBA. So I'm really high on Malcolm Brogdon, and he doesn't get much shine in the national media, but I think he is a very good player that will contribute big time to the Pacers next year. Especially with Oladipo out, that's going to be like Malcolm Brogdon's team, him and Sabonis at least. Okay, so next I have a guy who did just sign a pretty nice contract, but still people in the national media don't talk about him at all. He doesn't get much of a highlight really, and I've actually listened to a few guys on ESPN, Fox, YouTube, a few other places where when they talk about him, they say like he had a pretty decent year, but last year Julius Randle had a very good year. Not decent, it was very good. And most people, when I've heard them talking about Julius Randle lately, it's talking about like, well, why did the Knicks go after him? Well, here's why. Last year on the Pelicans, he averaged 21 points per game, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. He shot 52% from the field and 34% from 3. Now keep in mind, he's a 6'10 power forward center type. Um, and before this season, he never shot really any threes whatsoever. But this year he adjusted his game. He started shooting 3 3-pointers per game. And 34%, that's a pretty good clip for a guy that basically never really shot them at all before this. Like he would occasionally take one before, but never like consistently. Whereas this season he started consistently taking them. And yes, 34% is basically just average. But for a big guy who's never shot them before, being able to shoot average from three is pretty impressive and can open up a lot of things for an offense. So I think that he had one of the most underrated seasons last year. And he's a guy who is actually he's always been improving. So if you look at his rookie season to sophomore to third, fourth, and now fifth year, he's gone up in points per game every single year. And actually, like generally speaking, his his field goal percentage has gone up every year too. He kind of plateaued over the last 2 years, but at least he's above 50% right now. So I really like him a lot. If he could work and improve that and get that like 3 point percentage up to like 38%, he would be making it's the difference between I think for him making 20 million a year and making 25 million a year. Just he'd be so much more of a versatile offensive threat that would really change a lot of things because he's a very dominant player on the inside, but if he could become pretty well versed from the outside, that would really improve his game dramatically. He also is a very underrated ball handler. As I said, his passing is good too. He had the 3 assists a game last year. That's pretty good for a guy that played on a team with like multiple point guards with Drew Holiday and Alfred Payton handling the ball. He still got 3 assists per game. That's pretty impressive. And also, if you look at his per 36 numbers last year, he averaged 25 points per game, 10 rebounds, 4 assists. So he's just a guy that again, I think he's not an all-star caliber guy, but he could be the third best player on a championship team, I think, but people just they just don't talk about him because once he got once he got let go by the Lakers, or not let go, but just not re-signed, people thought like, "Oh, well, he's not in Los Angeles, so he's not really as newsworthy anymore." And it's just a matter of small markets, and New Orleans in NBA terms is a relatively small market, so he didn't get as much shine last year. But he's still a really good player and should be given a lot more consideration, and probably will be considering he'll be playing in New York. The fourth player I have here is Seth Curry. Yes, Seth, the younger brother, not Steph, Seth. So Seth missed all of the 2017 to 18 season. So really, as a whole, we're working off of 2 seasons of watching him play. 2016 to 17 in Dallas, and then last year in Portland. So in the 17th season, he played about 30 minutes a night, averaged 13 points per game, shot 43% from three-point land, 48% from the field, so pretty good efficiency for a shooting guard, point guard. And then this last year in Portland, he was the backup to CJ and Dame, so he didn't play very often, 18 minutes a night. But he did again shoot pretty good for a combo guard, 46% from the field, and then 45% from three. He only averaged 8 points per game, but again, his minutes were very limited. And let's look at the per 36 just to see what he could do in more of a starter's role. I think he actually, if I'm correct, he re-signed with Dallas. I think, yeah, he did. He did re-sign with Dallas. I'm pretty sure. Uh, if you adjust those per 36 minutes, last year he was averaging 15 points per game, 2 assists, 3 rebounds. So nothing special. But again, like you're not looking for Seth Curry to be your number one option. You're looking for him to be like JJ Redick, like your fourth option or your fifth option. or like a six man even. I just think that people don't talk about him though, and his efficiency is amazing. For his career, he's averaging 47% from the field and 44% shooting from three. Those are great numbers, and I'm really happy he's back in Dallas because I think that they're going to start him, and he's going to be a key role on that team as far as spacing. I like that Dallas team a lot between him, Doncic, Porzingis, uh, Tim Hardaway Jr. I think that they're going to have a pretty special crew there, and I look forward to seeing what they do. So yeah, Seth Curry. Again, not that I think he should be like a starter necessarily on a championship team or that he's going to be like your number one option on a championship team. I just think he's a good, solid player who should be given more attention than he's given. And lastly, here I have Lauri Markkanen of the Chicago Bulls. A really good young player, but even on this Bulls team, people seem to really talk about mostly Zach LaVine, and I think Lauri Markkanen is the best player on this team. His stats last year were pretty good. Yes, he was on a team that wasn't that good, so like you could just call him a good stats, bad team type of player, but I think I think he'll be a good player on whatever kind of team he's on. So last year he averaged 19 points per game, 9 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 1 block. He shot 36% from three. He shot 43% from the field. So of course those numbers could stand to go up. But all that being said, he does shoot a good amount of his shots from outside. Um, so like last year, for instance, 42% of his shots came from three. So like it makes sense that his shooting percentage is a little bit lower because like the vast majority of his shots, as far as like distribution, like shots from 0 to 3 feet, shots from 3 to 10 feet, shots from 10 to 16 feet, shots from 16 feet to three pointer, and then shots from three pointer or longer. 42% of his shots were coming from three. That's a really high percentage, and so I don't really blame him for having a low shooting percentage. But again, I think a guy that gets overlooked a little bit just because the Bulls are bad. But if those Bulls ever become a playoff team, I think he's going to for sure be an all-star. And I'm not going to do the sloppy, oh, he's a European white guy, he's like Dirk Nowitzki comparison, because I don't think he's necessarily like Dirk. I think he's a bit more athletic, and I don't think he has like the fadeaway game that Dirk does necessarily. He seems like at this point more of like a spot up, catch and shoot kind of guy. Occasionally he can take it on the block, I think, but I just don't see the Dirk comparisons necessarily. He's also only like 6'10", I think, so his body's a little bit different than like the 7'1" Dirk. Um, but yeah, that's basically it, guys. Those are the 5 players that I find underrated. There's a number of reasons why a player could be underrated, whether it's the market that they play in, how good their team is, the position that they play, their play style, whether it's exciting or not. Um, Regardless of all those things, I think these five guys are people who can be really good contributors on a team and should just be given a lot more credit than they're given. I think people take them for granted or just don't really consider them when thinking of guys who are really valuable or um, uh, just really valuable or useful on a contending team. But I think all these guys would be great fits on a number of contending teams. I know they're all situated in their various teams now, but in the future. All right, that's all I got for today, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.